This is Avalays Street in St. Augustine, Florida, the oldest street in St. Augustine. St. Augustine is the oldest city in the United States. Ponce de Leon discovered Florida in about 1513, but they didn't do much with Florida for about 50 years until the French decided to build a fort about 30 miles north of St. Augustine. At that time, the Spanish regent decided that they wanted Florida to stay Spanish. So they sent Pedro Menendez and several hundred colonists, soldiers, and sailors. They landed here in 1565 and promptly wiped out the French. They established St. Augustine in 1565. At that time, Avalays Street was the home of the hospital. So obviously it was the most important street in the fledgling town. Eventually, about 100 years later, the fort that stands here now was built. It took 23 years to build, but by that time, Avalays Street was well established. We're at the south end of Avalays Street, walking north, and you can see that many of the buildings are very reminiscent of the time when the British were here. Most of the Spanish homes and buildings were one-story, and you'll see that many of these are now two-story. That's because the British were here for about 20 years, from 1763 to about 1783, shortly after the Revolutionary War. They then rescinded their ownership, and the Spanish returned and stayed here until about 1821, when the newly formed United States of America negotiated a treaty with Spain to take over the state, what is now the state of Florida. And then in 1845, Florida became a state of the Union. This is a lovely street. We're walking north, coming up on the main plaza, and these are antique shops, restaurants, pubs, music venues, and as you can see, a favorite place for the tourists to walk. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, and I will share with you more of the streets of St. Augustine and its colorful history.